There once was a pharaoh named Hatshepsut. To be pharaoh was to be king. And to be king, the ultimate goal was not any sort of fairy tale romance, but to achieve immortality. To do this, a king had to achieve greatness, and Hatshepsut did this. First, by enriching the country beyond belief. Egypt was never richer than when under Hatshepsut's reign. Second, by building temples the most glorious of an entire era that still stand to this day as a marvel of architecture. And thirdly, by winning a successful military campaign against Nubia, and again enriching the country and making the people happier, and the nobles happier still. In Roman times, which are still ancient to us, but much more modern than the day and age of Hatshepsut, there is this term called damnatio memoriale, which for those of us who don't speak Latin, I had to Google it, means the damnation of memory. It means to be forgotten. And for a king trying to achieve greatness, for trying to become known forever, there is no crime worse than being forgotten. Hatshepsut was damned to this fate. She was damned, not for an action she committed, but for the accident of her gender, for Hatshepsut was a woman. This is what happened to Hatshepsut's memorials, cracked off temple walls, all because she was a girl. And this is what I attempt to get to today. This tale exemplifies what I'm going to talk about. Who are we nearly missing from our textbooks? Who are we actually missing? But most importantly, why are we missing them at all? And I think today, one myth I would like to debunk is humanity in general, how we got started, making sure that all the girls and both genders in the audience are aware that both of us have always worked together to make sure humanity has its place. But it's unfortunate that half of us have never heard she used when talking about the world. So, I'm sure when we think of cave times, the Stone Age, we may think of the Flintstones, a man banging rocks together, the solo hunter moving across, hunting little prey animals. But the issue is, well, where were the girls the whole time? This image is called the March of Progress. It's very simplistic. It shows us growing from our chimpanzee-like descendants, or ancestors, into the Homo sapiens species we are today. But despite how simplistic this image is, I have never seen a girl or a woman depicted in this manner. Another thing we may think of when we think of the Stone Age is cave art. For many communities and cultures across the globe, this is the only remnant we have of their society. A few scattered handprints or animals on cave walls. That's all we have of them. And when I had the luck to visit Coscar Cave in France, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, I do not speak French, so I got to listen to a recording in English talking about the cave. And what I heard was, he would have had to climb craggly cliffs to get to this area. He would have risked great life and limb to paint these majestic zebra-like creatures. He would have had to come here as a rite of manhood. He. But the fact of the matter is, Court Clinton, around 75%, 3/4 of handprints and hand stencils that are found across the globe are female hands. These hands that are reaching across time are those of a feminine persuasion. And when we talk about hunting, as I brought up earlier, which is usually considered a male pursuit, there have been graves found from Peru all the way to Northern Europe that show female skeletons buried with weapons and hunting tools. So hunting was not an all-male ordeal. Nor, I would like to add, was it the main way to feed a community. Hunting, again, is very strenuous, it's very dangerous. If you're hunting by yourself, it's even more likely you will become injured. So, in prehistoric times, people would hunt together because they did not have AK-47s. So they would hunt together as groups, drive animals off cliffs, kill them using natural causes like gravity. Another very important feature from prehistoric times is clothing, which please tell me you're all wearing that when you're in here today. That is the main reason we were able to move out of Africa as a species. Clothing is also a very cool example of cultural differences. Clothing that was very hard to find. It doesn't do well when burnt up, put under water, or buried 6 feet under. So the remnants we do have are far and few between. This dress is from Egypt. It was found in a cemetery. It's older than Jesus, literally. It's 5,000 years old. It's made completely out of linen. Weaving motifs are used to denote cultural differences, and this is a Greek urn, a few thousand years old, and these entirely are all weaving motifs that are found on pieces of fabric we have today, and women are depicted all the time in Greek art weaving. Now, you may be asking me, well, what does this matter? To me, women have always been sort of left out of the picture of humanity's start and end. And I think that's such a shame. I think part of it's also because domestic labor is so invisible. But domestic labor is the reason any of us are here today. Without gathering food, which is the byproduct of hunting, if someone could not hunt all the time, that's not enough to feed a community, then you have to gather food, which is gathering edible plants, gathering slow-moving animals. Around 80% of humanity's food actually came from gatherers, which, most of the time, were women. Because domestic labor is something that is associated with women, not because we are better suited for that work, like my hands are made for picking up a needle and thread, but because women have this unfortunate habit of having kids and making sure the next generation exists at all in the first place. We made that work for us. And every single thing I've listed today, the fact that cooking, weaving, and hunting are all factors that made humanity what it is. And I think it's important to know that, because if women have a past in making sure we've gotten to where we are today, then we sure as heck have a future in making it progress further. Now, I could mention a lot of named women as history gets further up. I could mention Giavanna, the first author ever known. She was a priestess from Mesopotamia. I could mention Ada Lovelace, the first computer programmer ever. I could mention the women of the Dahomey, who were female warriors from Africa. I could even mention the women who built the pyramids, even though they may lie unmarked in graves next to the most magnificent structures ever made. But they exist. But why don't you already know this? Why do I need to be on a stage telling you that women participated in building human history at all? Women have been a part of every civilization for the last 160,000 years. So why should I need to tell you that? Why are women invisible in the historical record? Why are other groups too? Now, it is often said that ignorance is bliss. But ignorance in today's day and age, it is a choice, and that is not blissful at all. Our access to technology today, our phone has more computing power than anything from the last 1,000 years, has more computer power than what took us to the moon, and yet we don't seem to use it very much. So, I've attempted to correct some misconceptions today about women in history and how we've always been here, how we've always been vital. But the more important question is, again, why are we not there in the first place? Why is there even needed to be a red talk about women in prehistory or noting at a few historical figures? And that is because we have decided collectively as a community very often that what is acceptable is what is true. What we choose to write down in our history books is more a reflection of us and what we want to be true rather than what is true. And if any of you are like, oh, that can't apply to our community, we would never do something like that and lie to ourselves to make ourselves feel better. Well, let's think about it. I moved to this school 6 years ago. I was not happy about it, to be honest with you. I went from a graduating class of like 15 in a hay bale to around 130, 150 kids, which may not seem like a lot to those of you growing up here, but to me that was quite a culture shock. And another culture shock was this, because I asked, when I moved here, I went to all my teachers and to all of the adults that I knew, and I said, hey, why do we have this? What is this? Which native tribe are we honoring? Why is this here? And you know what? In 6 years, I have never gotten a correct response. And I moved on to asking peers multiple times. I said, hey, which native tribe are we honoring? You've lived here your whole life. Who lived here before us? I've never gotten a correct answer. And so I had to do my own research. And the tribes that lived here, it's hard to know because, of course, forced assimilation and forcing them to move was a major problem for American colonials. They forced them out. The tribes that lived here today are gone. They're in Oklahoma. The Wendat and the Erie, the Ottawa, they're all gone. And what's interesting to me is that when we talk about honoring Native Americans, we would assume that honor to be something they want, to be something that's accurate. But this is a headdress. That is not even from the Great Lakes region. A headdress is from the Great Plains Indians, such as the Sioux and the Cheyenne. This is not an accurate portrayal of Native Americans from this region. I think that's a shame. Because if this is about honoring, who are we honoring? Are we honoring the Native Americans whose tribes have said repeatedly over the past 100+ years, whose Native organizations have said, hey, this is not what we want, this is disrespectful to us? Or are we honoring our own live history? Are we honoring our own ancestors instead of the people we're proclaiming to? Now, we are the next generation in this room. And I think it's important to note that I'm a senior. I'm leaving this year. I'm gone, I'm out. I'm going to college and I'm trying to forget about this place as soon as possible so I have a fun story to tell grandkids. But the issue is that you guys are mostly not 18. You guys have a choice to decide what to present yourselves to the world. This is our representation to the world that we have. And I don't think it's fair or accurate. Redskin is a designated racial slur. You can Google it. It's up there really quickly. So, this is your choice for what to do with this mascot, because you are the next generation of this town, of this county, and of this country. So make your choices, but make it deliberately to get rid of it, or make the decision to keep it permanently. Because you now have this information. Because ignorance is not bliss. It is secondhand when you choose not to look at it. Now, there is one more question we haven't answered yet. Who hacked Hatshepsut off her temple walls? Now, theories range wildly because academics can never agree on anything. But the most common theory is that her stepson, Thutmose III, chiseled his stepmother off her temple walls, broke her statues into bits, and then took her accomplishments and gave them to himself for his own glory. And that is what I'm trying to get at today. It is important to know who was written out of history because there's always a reason. There's always some war they're trying to justify. There's always some tale they're trying to tell you. There's always some mascot that is supposed to be a clumsy band-aid to cover up history that none of us truly know. Hatshepsut was ripped off her temple walls because it suited someone else better to lie and take her accomplishments. So, as you go back to class today, the main thing I want you to think on is, what don't you know? And why don't you know it? Thank you very much.